We move now to the next agenda item, number 6, related to the objection against what we call the feed ban, to make it short. So we start with the two rapporteurs for the objection, Madame Pedicini for the Greens and Anna Hazekamp for the Left. It's Mr., not Madame, sorry.
President, thank you. Here I am. I will switch in Italian. Okay, grazie.
Thank you very much. And first of all, I would like to thank my colleague, Hazekamp, for having worked on this together. Since the beginning of the bovine encephalopathy at the end of the 80s, it was immediately clear that the cause was the contamination due to the presence of prions in feed. So the use of processed animal protein, was banned in terms of the feed that was provided to all farmed animals in 2001, and prior to that there was a ban due to the fact that it was considered as dangerous for cattle and other farm animals. The Commission is now proposing that we lift the bans on the use of processed animal protein in feed for poultry and pigs. We don't think that this measure has anything to do with public health. It doesn't adequately address the issue of safeguarding animal health, nor does it in any way address the need for systemic change with regard to public health. We think that those rigorous measures were the reason why we were able to successfully eliminate this pandemic, this bovine spongiform encephalopathy. At the time, there was no ban with respect to the use of these processed animal proteins, and the ban was introduced to facilitate checks and inspections. And clear-cut separation of production lines is an essential prerequisite in order to avoid cross-contamination. And quite rightly, the Commission is suggesting that we introduce a number of measures to that end. However, the situation in many member states is characterized by a single processing line for feed for both pigs and poultry, and developing a second line would be a huge I dare say almost impossible task for many member states. There's the need to segregate not just production, but also storage, transport and packaging lines. I have serious doubts on the performance of official controls that continue to take place in a situation characterized by limited resources and the lack of sufficiently effective methods. We only use analytical methods, but we don't have methods to quantify the actual use of banned proteins. With regard to animal health, policy measures in order to promote sustainability ought to concentrate on improvements and furthering of better practices in farming, such as extensive farming, and this would allow for species-specific feed, eliminating the need for these processed foods. We know that using these forms of feed does not really meet the needs of a well-informed and careful consumer either. With regard to change, this measure does not guarantee better animal welfare, nor is it a natural-based system, nor does it make for a more sustainable method, which asks us for a consistent farm-to-fork strategy. We know that the term circular economy is used simply to justify practices that ought to be a thing of the past. Today, we know that most processed animal proteins obtained from pigs and poultry is either used in Europe or transported to third countries. So incineration, which is often talked about, has no role whatsoever in this sector. We're really trying to understand how to, in fact, make more profit out of this profit. That's what it's all about. And I would like to end by saying the import of poultry actually is not the issue. We export poultry, and so the issue of unfair competition is irrelevant. The situation with respect to pork is completely different. There's 1.3 million tonnes of processed animal proteins that are processed every year against 32.2 million tonnes of imports of soybeans. So these two quantities cannot at all be compared, and authorisations are not going to solve the problem we have with regard to importing soy for animal feed purposes. This is why I and we are against the adoption of this regulation. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much. We move to Anna Zakamp.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Pedicini, for your introduction. Today we are discussing the reversal of one of the most effective measures against the transmission of deadly animal diseases to humans. And that we are doing this during this corona pandemic makes the debate even more absurd than it would have been in other times. Mad cow disease has killed 177 people and more than 4 million animals were killed. The ban on feeding animal meal effectively stopped the outbreak. But that ban is now being reversed again, and I find that unacceptable. The Commission proposal does include a number of precautionary measures, but as the Wageningen University stresses, trade flows of animal meal are very, very difficult to trace, since there is a great deal of intermediate trade. Their research shows that cross-contamination of animal meal from different species in feed intended for specific animals is therefore very frequent. The Commission proposal, which refers to a separate production line and transport and distribution systems, is therefore totally unrealistic. I would like to know, does the Commission deny that such cross-contamination also occurred frequently in the production of medicated feed? And once again, Dutch research commissioned by the Ministry of Agriculture shows that it is technically unavoidable that during the production of a compound feed, part of the batch produced remains on the production line and eventually ends up in the next batch of the compound feed. The consequence of this carryover is that batches produced immediately after medicated feed contains residues of veterinary medicines, including antibiotics. And this will also occur in the production and distribution of animal feed in which animal meal may have been used in the Commission, if the Commission has its way. And this, together with the difficulty of monitoring this, especially given the reduction of official food controls in member states, leads to a highly dangerous situation, especially since the incubation period for BSE-related Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease is 4 to 5 years. It will be therefore at least 4 years before the potentially disastrous effects of lifting the ban on animal meal become apparent, and that is far, far too late. Certainly in a sector where there is large-scale fraud and scandal upon scandal, compliance with the measures to prevent cross-contamination is a dream. It's an illusion. It would cite the horse meat scandal as I would like to cite the horse meat scandal as an example. Abolishing much-needed preventive measures is really playing with fire. If we really want to work towards sustainable agriculture in which proteins are used efficiently and are not wasted, then we would be better off making the transition to consumption of vegetable proteins by humans instead of feeding animals to other animals in order to produce food for humans. In this way, we can save billions of hectares of land that are currently used for the inefficient production of animal feed. We can save billions of hectares and give them back to nature. A real protein transition avoids the inefficiency of the gastrointestinal tract of animals, which is on average requires 5 kilograms of feed to produce 1 kilogram of meat. That is a sustainable efficiency gain, and it is accompanied by numerous benefits for health, the well-being of the planet, people and animals. And I hope that our opposition to the lifting of the feed ban will be widely supported by our colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I formally open the Catch the Eye. So please put yourself on the list. Before moving to the Catch the Eye, I give the floor to the shadows, starting with the EPP. Yes, Giesecke.
Ja, vielen Dank, Herr Vorsitzender, liebe.
Yes, thank you, Chairman, dear colleagues. If we take a look at the objection, there are shortcomings in content. If you take a look at the definition of PAP, processed animal protein, is false. The more accurate definition is one that we know from Annex 1 of Regulation 142/2001 under point 3. If we take a look at processed animal protein, it does not include animal meal nor meat meal. The previously existing problem that no controls could prove whether these kind of animal proteins were present in this kind of meal has been solved. There are technical possibilities to detect impurities, animal proteins in feed to cattle. So those particular concerns that have already been dealt with. And if processed animal proteins are detected in the feed, it should not be fed to the animals anymore. So there will, to that extent, there will be no further cross-contamination. It is ruled out. I am rather surprised. Well, anyway, we've seen this objection comes from the left and Greens. This is all part of the circular economy for farm-to-fork strategy and very much in line with the objectives of the Green strategy. We're talking about animal proteins from animal byproducts, which are destined for human consumption and which can be usefully used in animal feed. And this is one way of looking after resources, and this is something we're always discussing in the European Parliament. We can appeal to science. I know the Greens don't like this. They only like science if it fits in with their ideology, but EFSA have said there's neither any problem for animal welfare or food security or the safety of human beings. And we are importing animal products, animals and animal products to Europe, which are fed with this kind of animal meal. For quite a long time, we've discussed these issues. There is no scientific basis for maintaining the ban. All of us are wanting to strengthen the circular economy and get overexcited about cutting down the rainforests. We're not going to be able to achieve the Green Deal if we cannot come up with pragmatic solutions with this as a first problem. I can understand this, and I would very much hope that the colleagues will properly base themselves on science, follow the Council, and vote against this objection. Ideologically, it is against scientific knowledge, and it should.
having a good animal welfare again for pigs and poultry. They are omnivores. They do eat, for example, insects and meat. So it was quite difficult to replace that with plant-based proteins. And then on the circular economy aspect, I do think that is a point there. We're not self-sufficient for the protein production in the European Union. We import that mainly from third countries. At the moment, indeed, those highly valuable animal proteins are exported to third countries. In those third countries, they are used to feed animals, and we import the meat from those animals. So we are eating it already. It's a little bit stupid, I would say, that we export proteins and then we have to import it again and then plant-based. It would be much simpler, indeed, to use the safe proteins that we have at the European Union already. And then, indeed, about safety. Yeah, well, we as legislators, we did establish agencies to control the safety and to do the research. And now it really feels like it's a political gut feeling towards scientific evidence. And I would strongly advise to follow science in this sense. I believe a FOC is created more on political reasons, indeed, to not support the livestock production in the European Union. We should all eat less meat. We should all change to plant-based diets. That is the reasons behind it. But I would like to warn you, I think if we cannot agree at such simple things, that will create also a lot of resistance, for example, with those that have to do and reach the targets for the Green Deal, especially also the agriculture community. If we continue like this, then I think we will have a very struggle in reaching the Green Deal targets. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So there is no ID shadow. So we move to ECR and Pietro Fiocchi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll start on a personal note. I'm a proud owner of several egg-laying hens. They're free-roaming, and I can assure you they love animal proteins because they eat worms, snails, insects, and, by the way, they also love fish, which is not their natural food, but comes from the leftover on my table. So to say that we cannot feed animal protein to chicken is against nature. And in my opinion, it's very ideological and not science-based, inferring or suggesting that by feeding animal protein to chicken or pigs, will eventually breed the spongiform or the mad cow disease and eventually get it to the human beings, because this is not science-based. This is ideological. So we need the controls. We need to act definitely, and I agree with my colleague from Renew, on the import and export of proteins and soya and so on. This is definitely something that we need to focus on. But to simply ban the use of animal proteins on animals that already are omnivore and so they eat animal proteins, it's total craziness. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I give you a couple of additional seconds to put you on the list for the Catch the Eye. And now I close the list. And the list is limited to Peter Liese.
Yeah, again, my problem with the camera. Just a second. We have it. Yeah, thank you, Chair. I will speak in German. Vielen Dank an.
Yes, thank you very much to all the colleagues. I must say I very much support what Jens Giesecke has said and Jan Houtema and Pietro Fiocchi. This was a very serious crisis at the time, but we now know very much about how it came about, and we've taken the measures to solve the problem. And if I've understood this, perhaps the Commission can confirm and clarify, then it is absolutely doubly, triply guaranteed that there's no risk to human beings for what comes on the table. There's no risk, no danger to human health. And I think it is important, therefore, that we do try and spare our resources. We've heard that this doesn't represent, we can't replace a great share of the proteins coming in, but if we really want to be more sparing with our resources, have a more circular economy, then we have to take a look at the measures that will help us. And there are certain measures that we have not been used yet. If you take lots of little small measures and small steps, when you can create an accumulated effect, if you will, bring them all together and it'll help us. So I think we ought to respect the comments from the good arguments from the Commission. Thank you.
Thank you. So we now move to the Commission. Werner van Gutten.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for giving me the floor. This topic is indeed about processed animal protein, and I call them PAP, and it is indeed an important one. And it's also a sensitive one. And we understand that because of its link to the painful history of BSE in the EU some 20 years ago. But the reality is that it's quite simple and straightforward. And please allow me to go through a few facts to put them right. The Commission's initiative is mainly about re-allowing some protein from non-ruminant in the feed of non-ruminant. So let me repeat, protein from non-ruminant in the feed of non-ruminant. And BSE is a disease of the cattle. Non-ruminant, like pigs or poultry, are not sensitive to BSE. The proposed measures are based on several EFSA scientific reports, which all confirm that the risk of BSE is negligible. The extension of the feed ban to non-ruminant back in 2001 was not because of a direct BSE risk. It was for practical and control reasons. At that time, we did not have reliable methods to ensure that there was no cross-contamination between ruminant PAP and non-ruminant PAP. If we had had those methods available back then, there would be no need for this measure now. The issues we were facing in 2001 have now been resolved. Firstly, the BSE is fully under control, and the proof is that the last case of classical BSE in the tail of the epidemic was found 5 years ago in 2016. The feed industry has been profoundly restructured and now ensures a proper separation of species. And appropriate laboratory test methods have been developed. They are specific and extremely sensitive, including the now well-known PCR method. And I would like to address some of the misunderstanding of some points made in the draft resolution. The resolution states that PAP comprises meat and bone meal. This is not correct. PAP comes exclusively from byproducts produced in food establishments from animals which were found fit for human consumption. Meat and bone meal comes from non-food grade animal byproduct and are therefore a wholly different product. And the Commission is definitively not allowing the return of meat and bone meal. The resolution criticizes the lack of methods to quantify the presence of PAP in feed. The quantitative methods would only be necessary in case of establishments of tolerance level. We are not here talking about pesticides of residue. We are proposing a zero tolerance. Therefore, we would only need a method who confirms absence or presence, not to quantify it. Concerning the risk of cross-contamination that was raised by some of the speakers before, the industry and the competent authority are very experienced with the segregation of production line, which is already enforced in the feed industry, including for medicated feed. It has proven to be efficient with no major problem, and let me reassure you that we would not be proposing these measures if we have some concern with cross-contamination. The resolution refers to older data on controls. And please allow me to quote the most recent and update overview report from Directorate F in DG Santé, which is from last year, and which is precisely dedicated to the official control of processed animal protein. And I quote the report. The audit found that overall, there is a robust and risk-based system in place for the planning of official inspection and sampling in this sector. Inspectors were able to adequately verify operators' fulfillment of the main requirements and aspects of the traceability of PAP. This report is fully available on DG Santé website, and I would invite you to read it. It very clearly demonstrates that the pub sector is appropriately and efficiently controlled in the EU. Dear Member of Parliament, the time is come now to relax the feed ban in non-ruminants in an orderly and controlled manner with the appropriate safeguard measures. There is no food safety or health justification to maintaining the current feed restrictions in non-ruminant. They are not backed up by science, and there is no international standard prohibiting the use of non-ruminant PAP in non-ruminant. Therefore, none of our trading partners or competitors have any similar measures in place. Because there is absolutely no need to do so, and we owe thus our farmers a better level playing field by lifting any restriction that is not justifiable anymore. Let me briefly list some of the benefits expected from the proposed reintroduction of non-ruminant PAP in the feed of pigs and the poultry. Real nutritional advantages in some categories of non-ruminant, considering the high value, the quality of these PAPs. Making better use of protein resources locally produced in Europe instead of exporting 40% of this PAP to third countries. Contributing to decreasing the EU dependency on importation of protein from the Americas in particular. Honourable members, may I take the opportunity to remind you that tomorrow, directly after the vote on this objection, you will also vote on an objection for GMOs authorization. The committee has a clear and unambiguous position on the authorization of GMO. One of your concerns is the negative effect of the cultivation and import of soybeans as a protein source for European livestock. This Commission proposal will help to decrease our dependence on imported GM soybeans. Whilst it won't solve the EU protein deficit, it is a step in the right direction, and further steps will follow under the Farm to Fork. In other words, apart from being fully aligned with the objectives of the regulation on BSE, these proposals fit very well into the Farm to Fork strategy. It's about making a better use of already existing high-value protein. It's about recycling, and it's about a more sustainable agriculture. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So we will vote tomorrow in the committee and, if appropriate, in plenary, second session of June or the 1st of July. So thank you. I now formally open the voting time. So the voting time is open for the text reinforced role for the European Medicines Agency, and so on and so on and so on. It will be closed at 5:45, and same for the guidelines for trans-European energy infrastructure and repealing regulation. Same timing, so the two votes are formally open. We stop now the first session of this afternoon, and we see each other again at 4:45.